Florida sun had long set, leaving Navarre, a quiet, coastal haven, bathed in the stillness of a Sunday evening. For 24-year-old Colby Vincent, this night, March 19, 2023, was the start of something beautiful. After months of grueling, emotionally scarred court proceedings, his 4-year-old daughter, Presley, was finally with him. They had just completed a mundane, joyful task, a quick trip to the grocery store. With bags in hand and his little girl close by, Colby approached the front door of his apartment. In that instant, the silence shattered. A single, ruthless gunshot rang out, ending Colby's life instantly. He collapsed on the pavement, the groceries scattering across the concrete. The only witness was his child, standing right there. When the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Department arrived shortly before 10 p.m., the scene was a tableau of domestic tragedy and cold-blooded violence. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. Deputies, initially responding to reports of a man down, found Colby deceased, shot once in the back of the head. The brutality of the injury immediately signaled a calculated act, not a random scuffle. The first critical task was securing the scene and identifying the victim. The area near the picturesque beaches was not known for violence, leading investigators to treat the initial calls with skepticism. But the bloody reality they encountered changed everything. The victim's young daughter, Presley, was taken into protective custody by deputies. Her tiny, traumatized presence a heartbreaking counterpoint to the horror. His daughter's grandmother quickly arrived on the scene, having been alerted by a neighbor, frantic for the child's safety. The initial theory was a robbery gone wrong, a desperate act of violence. But this hypothesis quickly crumbled. Deputies, searching Colby's pockets and the immediate area, noted his valuables were intact. His wallet, connected to his cell phone, was found, containing his ID and cards. There was no actual paper money wallet, just a card carrier, but nothing of monetary value was missing. This was not a crime of opportunity. It was a targeted hit. The focus immediately shifted from random crime to personal motive. As first responders worked, the scene offered more clues. The body was lying on the ground behind the building. Blood spatter was visible on the door jamb, confirming the proximity of the attack to the threshold of his home. The presence of grocery items, some even frozen, confirmed he was ambushed upon arrival, a momentary lapse in attention that cost him everything. One load of groceries was already inside, suggesting he was returning for a second trip. The immediate investigation turned to the neighbors. The calls had been multiple, reporting screaming and a gunshot. One crucial witness reported seeing a man walking away from the area right after the noise. This individual, described as a white male, tall, between 5 feet 11 inches and 6 feet 2 inches, and middle-aged, mid-40s to early 50s, with a bad bod, meaning heavier build, had abruptly told others to get home because a body just dropped. He then fled the scene on foot, walking toward a fine needles area. This established a potential suspect description and, more importantly, confirmed a calculated escape. He did not stick around to be interviewed, he warned others and vanished. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. Simultaneously, the victim's personal life came under immediate scrutiny. The strong smell of marijuana and visible containers suggested a possible connection to the drug world. Colby's family acknowledged he had a history with marijuana, and his lifestyle had been described as potentially dangerous. Was this a revenge killing? Was it connected to drug sales? These questions hung heavy in the warm Florida air. However, the most pressing matter was the custody situation. His daughter's grandmother was on the scene, revealing the painful recent history. Colby and Rachel, the mother of his child, had been separated for years, and the custody arrangement had been fiercely contested. The grandmother's friend, who lived upstairs in the apartment complex, confirmed the battle had become nasty. There were reports that Colby had recently threatened Rachel, stating, "I'll just take her and you'll never see her again." The battle, which had kept Colby from seeing his daughter for almost a year, had just culminated in a court order. The police knew they had to speak to Rachel more immediately to understand the depth of this conflict, and if anyone would have wanted to harm Colby in regards to that. The initial conversations with the grandmother and her friend revealed that Colby was excited, having just picked up Presley after the court-ordered exchange. The grandmother, who had handed the child off to Colby in the early evening, knew nothing of the murder until her best friend's son, who lived in the complex, called his own mother to report the massive police presence. The crime had occurred in the window of time between the court-ordered exchange and the call to 911. The fact that Colby's life was taken on the very day he finally won a chance to be a father to his daughter was a chilling, impossible coincidence. The focus narrowed. A murder with no visible signs of robbery or a clear, immediate connection to a drug-related hit. But there was the custody battle, a source of intense, visible hatred. Investigators realized the man seen fleeing was crucial, but the motive was likely far more domestic and personal than they first assumed. The next step was a face-to-face with Rachel Moore. Investigators had a description of the man who fled, and they had a powerful motive, the custody battle. But when they arrived at Rachel Moore's house that night, her reaction was not one of simple grief. It was one of instant, crushing panic, forcing detectives to ask, who was Rachel Moore talking to in the days leading up to Colby's death, and what desperate solution had she sought outside of the courtroom? For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. The night of the murder, detectives immediately converged on Rachel Moore's home to deliver the news about Colby Vincent. Their arrival triggered an immediate, visible panic in the 25-year-old mother. Upon answering the door, Rachel's first and only concern was for her daughter, Presley, demanding to know, "Is Presley okay? And where's Presley?" Her fiancé, Christopher, was with her, providing what seemed like strained support. The shock was understandable, but the sheer level of distress, including her worry about being in trouble, made the deputies uneasy. They assured her that Presley was safe and with her mom, but Colby was deceased. The initial, formal interview with Rachel the following day peeled back the layers of their tumultuous past. She recounted a 4 to 5 year relationship with Colby that had birthed Presley, now 4, but had ended abruptly when their child was 14 months old. The separation was entirely driven by Colby's deepening involvement with drugs. Rachel was steadfast. She could not allow Presley to be around that lifestyle. She described his descent, noting he was pushing his life towards this situation, attempting to open a wake and bake dispensary. She felt that if he sold drugs, he would have money or product, making their home a dangerous situation for our daughter. Rachel provided details of multiple attempts to leave him, only to have him follow her back to her mother's house, bringing his drug activities with him. The relationship hit a breaking point when, according to Rachel, Colby was shaking Presley and dismissed shaking baby syndrome as a myth. She quit her job and vowed to protect her child, refusing to allow unsupervised visits until they were court-ordered. This was the foundation of the custody dispute that raged for nearly 3 years. Colby, initially an uninterested partner, suddenly began seeking 50-50 custody, which Rachel viewed as a retaliatory move, not one in the child's best interest. The court hearing, however, was disastrous for Rachel. It was moved up due to a death in the judge's family, and crucially, Rachel's evidence, including parenting classes, photographs, and other materials, was not allowed to be seen in time. She felt the judge viewed her as a spiteful mother, ignoring the real danger posed by Colby's lifestyle. The judge's final ruling for 50-50 custody left her feeling trapped and coerced. She dropped Presley off, terrified of being in contempt of court, only to receive the call from detectives later that same night. Concurrently, investigators interviewed Rachel's mother, Christina. Christina's account corroborated Rachel's history of conflict with Colby, especially his drug use and selling. Christina recalled having been lied to about the extent of Colby's activities, only to find out he was selling drugs. She also confirmed the court-ordered exchange, revealing she was so nervous she told her best friend's son, who lived in the same apartment complex as Colby, to keep an eye out for Presley. When that friend's son later noticed the police presence, the chain of calls led Christina to race to the scene without telling Rachel. This detail established Christina's direct knowledge of the custody exchange and the subsequent crime scene location. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. However, a conflicting narrative emerged when detectives interviewed Colby's mother and his stepfather. They painted Rachel as manipulative and controlling. Colby's mother insisted he had a medical marijuana card and was trying to become a better father, restructuring his work schedule just to get 2 consecutive off days so he could spend the night with Presley. According to them, Rachel cut off all contact once they hired an attorney. They also revealed a prior incident involving a traffic stop where Colby was arrested for marijuana. Rachel had called them, crying, implying she was a victim of Colby's irresponsibility. Yet, Colby later told them Rachel and a cousin were in the truck the entire time, suggesting she was manipulative and trying to let Colby take the blame for everything. They saw Colby right after he picked up Presley, grinning from ear to ear, excited about their Waffle House dinner plans. For Colby's family, the motive was clear. Rachel didn't win the custody battle, and they believed she was capable of orchestrating the attack. When detectives returned to Rachel for a second, more focused interview, they challenged her on this very point. Who would have felt so strongly for your emotions and for your protection, and for her protection that they may have taken things into their own hands on your behalf? Rachel adamantly denied anyone would do this, insisting her family was Southern Baptist, focused on prayer, not starting a war. She repeated how bad this looked for her, highlighting her panic and fear of losing her daughter. Her constant panic and her denial of any violent contacts created a wall of suspicion. She admitted she knew how terrible the timing looked. Colby, whom she was mandated to see by court order, was dead on the very day of the handoff. The investigators pressed the point of external help. We have a picture of the person who did it, and it's only a matter of time before we identify him. But everything keeps coming back to this custody thing. The focus was no longer if someone did it for her, but who. Investigators had identified a man who matched the description of the fleeing suspect. A man with a history of violence and a direct, though surprising, connection to Rachel Moore, Jason Curtis. But the next shocking discovery would come not from Jason's past, but from a small, handwritten note discovered tucked away in his car. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. The puzzle of the tall, heavy-set, middle-aged man seen fleeing the scene of Colby Vincent's murder found its solution in the complex web of Rachel Moore's family. The suspect was identified as Jason Curtis, a 53-year-old man who was Rachel's ex-stepfather, a person she affectionately knew as Booger. Jason was a deeply troubling figure, 6 feet 4 inches and 235 pounds, with a history as a violent offender and dishonorably discharged from the military. His social media was a shrine to his large gun collection. The crucial link between Jason and the crime scene was not immediately obvious, given his residence in Alabama, hundreds of miles away. However, license plate readers tracked a car registered to Jason's current girlfriend, Angela, in the vicinity of Colby's apartment on the night of March 19th. The detectives tracked Angela down for an interview at her local police department in Alabama, presenting her with a simple question. Where were you and Jason that night? Angela maintained they had been on a romantic getaway to Navarre, the town where Jason had lived 18 years prior. She insisted they were just driving around, visiting his old stomping grounds. When pressed on whether they stopped or saw anyone, she repeatedly minimized their stops, mentioning only a public beach pavilion bathroom and a stop at a Tom Thumb gas station. She was adamant that Jason was never out of her sight for more than 10 minutes, the time he supposedly spent relieving himself. However, the detectives had already pinpointed a massive, calculated flaw in this alibi. The Tom Thumb gas station, the hotel, and Colby Vincent's apartment complex all shared an interconnected parking lot. The detective revealed this map to Angela, pointing out that Jason had strategically parked their car in the hotel lot, close enough to the murder scene to commit the act and return in 10 minutes without her ever suspecting anything. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a deliberate staging. Furthermore, Angela revealed Jason had directed them to a specific liquor store near Navarre, one he used to frequent. This liquor store was located in the same shopping center as the Publix where Rachel and Christina had conducted the custody exchange with Colby earlier that evening. This established both Jason's opportunity and a shocking proximity to the victim just hours before the murder. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. The most damning physical evidence came when investigators searched Angela's car. Tucked away inside, they discovered a handwritten note in Jason's handwriting. The note contained specific, detailed information about the victim, Colby Vincent's name, his apartment address, a possible phone number, and a physical description, including buzzcut bald and 6 foot. This was undeniable proof that Jason had not only been planning the murder but had been given the victim's precise location and personal details by someone. Angela, upon seeing the note, grew pale, realizing her boyfriend was not just revisiting his past. She also revealed a disturbing text she received that very day from Jason's mother, asking if Jason had killed somebody named Colby. The concern from his own mother confirmed Jason's family understood his capacity for violence and believed he was the killer. Angela also admitted Jason knew Rachel was upset and going through some custody stuff, confirming his motive was tied to the court battle. Jason Curtis was arrested during a traffic stop in Alabama. During his subsequent interrogation, he immediately denied knowing Colby Vincent, but quickly contradicted himself. He claimed he was home all day, but when confronted with the fact that they had spoken to Angela, he admitted, "We did go to Florida." He confirmed being in Navarre and knowing about the custody issues from Rachel, stating she was real upset about the court ruling in Colby's favor and refusing to look at pictures of where the baby been abused and burnt. Jason claimed he was trying to do all I can for Rachel. The interview reached its climax when detectives made a tactical maneuver, trying to corner him by making him believe Rachel was in trouble. They suggested he would let Rachel go to jail for something she did not do. Jason, maintaining his denial, made a fatal error. He was asked why he thought he was in the chair. Jason replied, "Because you believe I shot somebody." The arresting officers had never mentioned the manner of death. Jason had provided the detail all on his own. The detectives pressed him on his recent communications with Rachel and her mother, Christina. He lied, claiming he hadn't talked to Christina in years, a claim immediately refuted by the fact that Christina mentioned talking to him as recently as his father's funeral. The evidence was piling up. His presence at the scene, the hit list, his knowledge of the specific details of the murder, and his clear motive of protecting Rachel. All that remained was to break Rachel's carefully constructed wall of denial. Rachel Moore and her mother, Christina, were brought in for a third interview. Rachel's story began to unravel under the weight of the evidence against Jason, forcing her to make a desperate decision. Facing the possibility of an accessory charge and losing her daughter, she finally chose to speak, admitting she had contacted Jason, but claiming she was just panicking. But the police knew the full truth was hidden in her deleted text messages, and those messages were about to be recovered. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. The third interview with Rachel Moore and Christina was the final crucible. Rachel, distraught and seemingly broken, was alone with her mother for a moment. Christina immediately implored her not to speak, but Rachel felt she had no choice. She was terrified of how awful and suspicious everything looked and was desperate to save herself and her daughter. She made a calculated decision to admit to a form of careless contact, hoping to avoid the capital felony charge that was looming. Rachel confessed that she had called Booger Jason Curtis on Monday after the disastrous court date. She was panicking and told him everything about the 50-50 custody ruling and the injustice she felt. She admitted Jason had responded by sending her pictures of guns and knives via Facebook Messenger, saying he would take care of it. However, she dismissed this as meaningless because he lived so far away, saying she thought nothing of it. She also admitted she deleted that immediately as soon as everything hit the fan, understanding that it would look bad. Rachel claimed that her message offering to pay for Jason's gas was merely a joke. LOL, at this point, I'll pay for your gas if it means I stop having to change my sheep. The joke, she insisted, was about her having anxiety-induced bedwetting over the custody battle. She desperately tried to frame the entire exchange as her seeking comfort, not commissioning a murder. She revealed the shocking phone call from Jason on the night of the murder. It was less than a minute long. She described him as sounding excited. He told her, "Don't worry, I gotta go. I put my message in the wind." Rachel said her heart dropped, and she immediately deleted all their communication because she believed he had hurt Colby and that she was now implicated. She stated her fear was always that this situation would ruin my life and lead to her daughter being taken away. Despite the claims of distress, officers noted she cried out constantly but produced no actual tears. Meanwhile, investigators had been digging into the digital records of everyone involved. They discovered that both Rachel and her mother had a far more extensive and suspicious communications history than either admitted. Christina, who had claimed not to have spoken to Jason in years, had an extensive call history with him and had performed several online searches for Colby Vincent's address. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button. The ultimate breakthrough came when law enforcement digitally recovered the text messages and call logs that Rachel had meticulously attempted to erase. The recovery of the deleted call history showed that Rachel and Jason had called each other 10 times in the week between the custody hearing and the murder. This was not a casual conversation. The content of the recovered Facebook Messenger texts was the final, undeniable proof of premeditation and conspiracy. The texts did not support Rachel's claim of an innocent joke or seeking comfort. They revealed a chilling plot. On March 14th, Jason Curtis texted Rachel, asking, "Anytime, baby, I love you too. Do I need to come down there and hunt him down? LOL." Rachel's response was not a denial or a dismissal. It was a calculated piece of information meant to facilitate the hit. "Not much hunting to do. I have an address." Later, when they discussed the weapons, Rachel had even joked about which was better for the job. "I jokingly said whatever would be easiest to carry." This was not an accessory charge. This was participation. She had provided the motive, the information, and the address, and he had confirmed his intent to travel and kill. The gas money joke sealed her fate, confirming the exchange was about facilitation, not anxiety. Jason Curtis was formally charged with first-degree murder. The evidence against him was conclusive. The hit list note, the calculated parking spot, his confession of knowing the manner of death, and the retrieved texts. He was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. Florida then waited for the verdict on Rachel Moore. Was she merely careless, or was she a principal conspirator? The jury ruled that she had schemed with her ex-stepfather to eliminate her custody problem. Rachel Moore was found guilty as a principal to first-degree premeditated murder and for tampering with evidence. She was also sentenced to life in prison. Christina's charges were later dropped when new evidence came to light. The ultimate tragedy is that Colby Vincent, a young father, was executed on his doorstep moments after finally winning the right to be a consistent part of his daughter's life. His death, orchestrated by his ex, was not about justice for past drug use, but the direct consequence of a woman who felt entitled to sole custody. Today, Rachel Moore is serving out her life sentence, and her daughter, Presley, is growing up without either of her parents, a devastating casualty of the court-ordered, deadly solution. And as always, you've been watching True Crime Story Vault, where every story is told with facts, empathy, and respect for those who can no longer speak for themselves. For more true crime stories like this, hit the subscribe button and comment your thoughts below. Until next time, remember, the truth is never buried.